Anyway, so two wives, and so he says, I want to leave and go, and wants to give her land. And Maitreya asks a question, look, what will happen? Will I be happy? Will I be happy all the time, and so on and so forth? And even without death, etc. He says, no, you will have a little bit of land, afterwards you're going to die. Then she says, what's the point of all the wealth if you're going to die anyway? How can you be happy? So there is a context in which the discussion begins. So I'm just going to draw out one very significant, actually it's a sentence, but the whole paragraph repeats the sentence endlessly. So I will just read it, and then I'll tell you how it gets translated normally. And I will propose a translation, which I think is a correct translation. The Sanskritist can help me show that, as usual, I don't know Sanskrit, and as usual, I'll tell them they don't know Sanskrit. So, but it's actually shocking what he says, morally shocked. That is what, according to him, Atman and Brahman is. I will discover that. Please read.
He said, it is Yajnavalkya who
He is
said,
explaining what is Atman, Brahman.
it is not for the sake of the husband, my dear, that he is loved, but for one's own sake that he is loved. It is not for the sake of the wife, my dear, that she is loved, but for one's own sake that she is loved. It is not for the sake of the sons, my dear, that they are loved, but for one's own sake that they are loved. It is not for the sake of the wealth, my dear, that it is loved, but for one's own sake that it is loved. It is not for the sake of the Brahmana, my dear, that he is loved, but for one's own sake that he is loved. It is not for the sake of Kshatriya, my dear, that he is loved, but for the one's own sake that he is loved. It is not for the sake of the worlds, my dear, that they are loved, but for one's own sake that they are loved. It is not for the sake of the gods, my dear, that they are loved, but for one's own sake that they are loved. It is not for the sake of the beings, my dear, that they are loved, but for one's own sake that they are loved. It is not for the sake of all, my dear, that all is loved, but for one's own sake that it is loved. The self, my dear Maitreyi, should be realized, should be heard of, reflected on, and meditated upon. By the realization of the self, my dear, through hearing, reflection, and meditation, all this is known.
Now, this is a different translation. Most translations, there's a word that comes there, it's called Atmanastu. It's translated as one's own sake. How they translate it is, for example, it is not for the sake of husband that he is loved, but for the sake of Atman he is loved. This is how they translate it. Okay. Atmanastu is because of Atman. This is the only one of the very few translations where, now the first question is, to the Sanskritist I want to ask you, when they say Atmanastu, does it mean for the sake of Atman, or it's a way of saying for one's own sake? Which is correct? One's own sake. Is that correct? No. I think it is correct. So, I mean, in other things they say for the sake of Atman. Therefore you must seek out Atman. That's how it gets translated. You love a wife for the sake of Atman. You love wealth because of the sake of Atman. So you do everything for the sake of Atman, because Atman is the highest. This is how the translation goes. But actually it's wrong. It says for your own sake. First let me put it in Kannada, what Yajnavalkya is saying, and then I'll bring it to English. ನಿಮಗೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಯಾಕೆ ಬೇಕು ಅಂದರೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಮೇಲೆ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಿಮಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ. ನಿಮಗೆ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹೆಂಡತಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಿಮಗಿಷ್ಟ ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಅಷ್ಟೇ, ನನ್ನ ಕಂಡ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೇನು ಪ್ರೀತಿನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಈ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನ? ದಿಸ್ ವಿ ಸೇ ಇನ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫಿಶ್ನೆಸ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಲ್ವಾ? ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಯಾಜ್ಞವಲ್ಕ್ಯ ಸೇಯಿಂಗ್? ಎಕ್ಸಾಕ್ಟ್ಲಿ ದ್ಯಾಟ್. You are in love with your children not because you love your children. You want children. You want money. You want wife. This you is Atman. says Yajnavalkya. Therefore you must know it. So you want to know who is Atman, no? Prajapati, you said you didn't realize what is Atman. This is Atman, you. What you call selfish you. ಎಲ್ಲ ನಿನಗೋಸ್ಕರನೇ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊತೀರಾ ನೀವು ಅಂದರೆ ಅವನು ಆತ್ಮನಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಇರೋದು ಅದೇ ಆತ್ಮ. Are you understanding what I'm saying? ಯಾವುದನ್ನು ನೀವು ಸ್ವಾರ್ಥ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀರೋ ಅದು ಆತ್ಮ. In a way it makes sense. ಯಾರಿಗಪ್ಪ ಮೋಕ್ಷ ಬೇಕಾಗಿರೋದು? ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಪ್ಪಂಗಲ್ಲ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಅಜ್ಜಿಗಲ್ಲ, ನಿನ್ನ ಹೆಂಡತಿಗಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೆ ಬೇಕು. ದುಡ್ಡು ಯಾರಿಗ್ರಿ ಬೇಕು? ನನಗೆ ಬೇಕು. BMW ಯಾರಿಗೆ ಬೇಕ್ರಿ? ನನಗೆ ಬೇಕು. ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ನನಗೆ ಬೇಕು. ಅದೇ ಆತ್ಮ. ಯಾಜ್ಞವಲ್ಕ್ಯ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ. ಯಾಜ್ಞವಲ್ಕ್ಯ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಆತ್ಮನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡಿರೋದು. ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ಪ್ರಜಾಪತಿ ಮಾಡಿದ ಏನು ಕಾಣಿಸಿದೆ? ಅವರೇ ಕಾಣಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ವಿರೋಚನೆಗೆ ವಿರೋಚನ ಕಾಣಿಸಿದಾನೆ, ಇಂದ್ರಂಗೆ ಇಂದ್ರ ಕಾಣಿಸಿದಾನೆ. ನಾನೇ ಕಂಡೆ, ಹೌದಪ್ಪ ನೀನೇ ಆತ್ಮ. ಕನ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಿ ಇದೆ. ಸೊ the reason why you criticize your friend, your wife, your husband, ಎಲ್ಲ ಬರೀ ನಿಮಗೋಸ್ಕರನೇ ಮಾಡ್ಕೋತೀರಾ ನೀವು, ಬೇರೆ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. ಬೇರೆಯವರು ಒಂದು ನಿಮಗೆ ಇದೇ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ನಾನು ನಾನು. That is exactly what seeking Atman is. Please tell me you are not shocked, then you are all liars. This is Atman, this is the highest. ಏನು ಸ್ವಾರ್ಥ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವೋ ನಾವು ಇವತ್ತು, ಅದು ಹೈಯೆಸ್ಟ್ ಗೋಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಹ್ಯೂಮನ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀಯಾನೆ ಯಾಜ್ಞವಲ್ಕ್ಯ. ಆರ್ ಯು ವಿಲ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಬೈ ದ್ಯಾಟ್? Reasoning is impeccable because he says, since you're doing it everything for yourself, it's very important to know who you are. ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ನನಗೆ ನನಗೆ ನನಗೆ. ಹಾಗಾದ್ರೆ ನೀನು ಯಾರೋ ಅಂತ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಪ್ಪ, ನೀನು ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಪಟ್ಟೆ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟು ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಆತ್ಮನ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್. ನನಗೆ ದುಃಖ ಆಗಿದೆ, ನನಗೆ ಸಂತೋಷ ಬೇಕು, ನನಗೆ ಅದು ಬೇಕು ಇದು ಬೇಕು, ನನ್ನ ಕಾಮಗಳು ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಇಂದ್ರ ವಿರೋಚನ ಇದು ಮೈ ಡಿಸೈರ್ಸ್ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಬಿ ಫುಲ್ಫಿಲ್ಡ್. ಹಿ ಸೇಸ್ ಫೈಂಡ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ and that means yourself. If you are a Christian or a Muslim, you can't translate it this way. So what have our translators done? They don't translate it for one's own sake. They say for the sake of Atman. They write. You do it, you search for the sake of Atman. Rubbish. You do it only for your sake. Indians were very empirical. They understood people the way they function. We all do it for ourselves. Yes. And therefore they found it very important that we understand ourselves. Because you do everything for yourself. Therefore, understand who you are. That's Atman. It becomes selfish. You must know one thing. Only if you assume that the self is the Christian, Muslim and Jewish self with the soul, then it is selfish, not otherwise. This idea of selfishness, egoistic, makes sense only if you use Christian and Jewish and Muslim conception of human beings, the one we were talking about yesterday. They must have that idea, because that is Christian, Jewish, Muslim. That's not. Their conception of human existence makes you selfish. If you don't have that conception of person, it's not selfish at all. So most normal behavior of all human beings Hence, knowing yourself becomes very important. Who am I? When I'm doing everything for my sake, who am I then? That's why the question becomes important to you. You are not searching for Atman because you want to satisfy Vishnu or something like that. No, because you want it. You want it. If you don't search for Atman, it's because you don't want it. It's as simple as that. So everything you do for the sake of yourself. Yes. But who is this self? For whose sake you're doing all these things? You have to understand, because otherwise you might be doing it for something else, someone else. Feeling unhappy, therefore. So if you translate it this way, it confirms what the British told about us, that we are immoral people, because selfishness, egoistic, is considered as the normal, the ideal, and the end point of human existence. But that's according to their understanding of human beings. And because you accepted that without understanding that, we think this is selfish. But you don't function that way. They have a pseudo discussion in Western philosophy about it, Western ethics. It's called altruism and egoism. Altruism is where you work for the good of others. Egoism is what you work only for your own good. You know what the pseudo discussion is? They say altruism is actually egoism. You desire to help others, therefore you help others. It's for your own sake. So you're actually egoistic. This is a pseudo discussion that goes on. Altruism, egoism. That's right. You want to help others. Who wants to help? You. So you do it because you want it. Therefore you are a bloody egoist. And egoism is supposed to be terrible, of course, in Western ethics and in Christianity and so on and so on and so on. Now it's their problem. Indians took this very seriously. Therefore they said, find out who you are. Because if all your life you're spending only for your sake, find out who you are, man. Otherwise, who knows? You'll be spending all your life for the sake of a donkey or something. You know, don't do it. Spend life for yourself. Supreme form of egoism. Yajnavalkya's teaching. Only if you accept Western conception of self. If you don't accept it, it's not egoism at all. So find out for yourself whether you're shocked or not. Of course you're shocked. I have heard any number of you say, no, I don't do it for myself, I'm doing it for you. You always hide it. All of you feel that, don't you? ಎಷ್ಟಲೇ ಬಯಸ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀರ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸ್ವಾರ್ಥಿ ನೀನು, ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ ನಿನ್ನ ಬಗ್ಗೆನೇ ಯೋಚನೆ, ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರ ಕಂಡ್ರೆ ನಿನಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆನೇ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕಿರಬೇಕು? ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಯೋಚನೆ ಆದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ತಾನೇ ಯೋಚನೆ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. ಅಯ್ಯೋ ನನ್ನ ಹೆಂಡತಿಗೆ ದುಃಖ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ನನಗೆ ದುಃಖ ಆದ್ರಿಂದ ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ನಂದೇ. ಹೌದು, ಬಯಸ್ಕೋತೀವಿ. ಏನೋ ಪ್ರಪಂಚ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಿನ್ನ ಸುತ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಇಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ, ಸುತ್ತಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಆಸೆ ನನಗಷ್ಟೆ. If you don't understand this, that is, if you don't take yourself seriously, you will not be able to seek Adhyatmic knowledge at all. Trust me on that. If you do not take your own desire seriously and fight to find out and satisfy it or whatever, you will never be happy. And if you're unhappy, you're the one who will be unhappy. ಸತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕಥೆ ಹಾಡೇ ಹಾಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಯಾವುದು ಮರ್ತೋಗ್ಬಿಡ್ತದೆ. ಮೇರ ನಮ್ಮ ಜೋಕರಲ್ಲಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಹತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹುಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಹತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಮನ್ನಾಡೆ ಹೇಳಿರೋದು. ರೋತ ಆಯಾ ರೋತ ಸತ್ತೆ ಏನೋ ಮರ್ತೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ. ಹತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸತ್ತೆ, ಹತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದೆ, ಹತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಸತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅದು ನಮ್ಮ ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲ ರೀ ಅದು. ಆ್ಯಕ್ಚುಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಮಗ ಹುಟ್ಟಿದಾಗ ಅಳ್ಳೇ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನಕ್ಕೊಂಡೆ ಬಂದ. ಅದು ಯಾರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳೆಲ್ಲ ಅಳ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋ ಸುಳ್ಳದು. ಹುಟ್ಟಿದಾಗ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಅಳ್ತಾ ಹುಟ್ಟಲ್ಲ. Point is, this arises from an understanding, an empirical study of human beings without the pseudo-morality that Christianity, Judaism, Islam has put on people on the world. If you want to help human beings, you must study them and understand them the way they are, not judge them. And the Jews and the Muslims, the Christians, the only thing they do is judge. And you know what the result is? Look at the world. They're destroying humanity. These three of groups. And the secularists who take over their ethics and transform it. Together they're destroying human existence, human world. Nature they're destroying, societies they're destroying, cultures they're destroying everything. And they are the ones who talk about justice, social justice. Who are the people who talk about social justice in India? They are the most unjust people that exist on earth. Most politicians are the ones who talk about social justice. Who are the most immoral people on this earth? Those are the politicians, aren't they? So if you want that human beings are happy, if you want that you should be happy too, then you have to see what kind of a creature you are, what kind of an organism you are. And that is what science is all about. Studying it the way the world is. And that's what the Indians did. 4,000 years ago, they started this investigation. They didn't stop for various reasons, it got stopped, but it's another story. Scientific research. This is egoism, etc., are moral terms. If this is the way we are, well, that's the way we are. Why do you have to judge that? If that's the way human beings, it's like having 2 legs. How can you judge that? What should you have? 35 legs or something, is it? Maybe you should have 35 legs, but unfortunately you only have 2. So accept and try to walk on those 2 legs. Accept human beings the way they're born. That's what Indians have done. This pseudo-morality comes from Christianity, Judaism, Islam. For us, it comes from Muslims, it comes from Christians. All this moral talk comes from them. We don't have the language to do that kind of moral talk in any of our regional languages or in Sanskrit. We don't have even vague equivalents to the word ought. You ought not to kill. We cannot say that in our languages. Doesn't exist. If you have to be an egoist, you must have a bloody soul. Otherwise you can't be an egoist. You must have an ego. Otherwise you can't be an egoist. Ego is soul. Soul exists in human beings according to the Jews, Christians. This is the hypocrisy in moral language. This is the hypocrisy in Christianity, Judaism and Islam. And we accepted it. And our culture is the opposite. Our notions of human beings, opposite. And I think our notions of human beings, the reason why I prefer it is because I think it's the most scientific notion that I know. Not the Christian, not the Muslim, not the Jewish. Most superstitious, most idiotic notion of human beings is what they have. But we think they're the best. No, it's not. We are ashamed of Indian notions. They're the most scientific that exists in the world. So this is Atman, people. This is what Virochana, this is what Indra. They don't understand it. You don't either. Because the question still remains, who is this I for whose sake Balu is doing all the things? His I. What is it? That you don't get the answer here. No, of course not. It's telling you what it is. So what does it mean when somebody said yesterday, for one's own sake, that one's own is hidden in the body? What the hell does that mean? Why do you love? I love my wife. That means this I is hidden deep in Balu's body. Oh, really? Yeah. That is the bullshit when I talk about Dehina as Atman in the body. If Nanu is hidden inside the body, people, that is precisely the soul of the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims. That is the I. In that culture, in that religion, I is the soul. So this is Atman, finally. This is absolute selfishness, egoism. And this is Brahman. Well. Miracles never stop, do they? That's what India is. That's what Indian culture is. And in my eyes, most scientific, one of the most brilliant, not one of the most brilliant, the most brilliant culture that exists on the planet Earth. And this is our hope. This is our hope of humanity. Either we get destroyed by the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims and the secularization of these three religions. That's what's happening. We'll all get destroyed. Or we survive. If we want to survive, we need this. This is the only option we have. Choose it. Take your Max Weber or take your Manu. Max Weber is a sociologist. Manu was the one who spoke about Varna Sankara. Choose. Max Weber, German scientist, scientific, go. Result. Just look at the world today. That's where we are. Choose. All right? Thank you very much. Now, your responses. If you don't give a response, I had another text which I wanted to read, I won't read it. It can't be you're shocked so much by new things. It's not possible. They're very old things. This is 4,000 years old. I'm not saying anything new. And I'm not giving any interpretation, right? I'm just reading it.
So, one thing I would like to draw your attention how Madhvacharya explains this thing.
Yeah.
Atma Narayanah tasyaiva hi kamena patyadihi priyo bhavati nahi patyadinam jayadinam aham priyah syamiti kamana matrena priyatvam bhavati bhagavadichchayeva hi tad bhavati. Atma is the Narayana. Because of his wish, wife and children
Allowed and so on.
Yeah.
I don't want to quarrel with Madhvacharya. I just want to ask you one question. Do you think you love your child because of Narayana? Or do you love him because he or she, who she or he is? I don't know anybody who, it's possible Madhvacharya did it. Was he married? He was not, so I don't know about it. But I don't see anybody loving their wives, their children. Or for example, you have a BMW. Why do you love it? Because of Narayana. No, you love it because of BMW. So, if Madhvacharya is saying that's possible, but he cannot be speaking about us human beings. No, not possible. So, why do you love that painting of Monet? Because Narayana loves it. No, because I like it. So, I'm sorry. It's not true. I mean, it could be talking about something else. Human beings in Mars or something, possible. Yeah, maybe they think that way there. But on Earth, we don't. So it's empirically untrue.
There are also expressions of Atman, or they are also Atmans. So if that is possible, then talking about something Narayana and all those things will not come into existence. So I think they are talking about a human reality
I think so.
or animal reality, maybe.
I think it's human, maybe animal also, I don't know. But definitely human. But it must be at some level also animal. I mean, an animal seeks shelter, wants to eat, it's because for itself, no? So,
Few reflections over here. Position is not right. Okay. Coming to this, first thing is related to the morality or what is moral conduct or whatever you may term it as. So that means to say that our ancestors or whoever, maybe 2000 years or 3000 years before, were never putting anything in this frame of morality.
no, I don't say that. See, but I don't want to go into that, but there are two kinds of, very generally speaking, two kinds of morality. One is which uses words like you ought not to kill, ought, English ought. That's one kind of way of talking about morality, which talks about things which are forbidden, things which are permitted, and so on. This is called the normative thinking, and that is for Christians and the Jews and the Muslims, right?
Right.
They have that notion. That is their morality. That is how they think about moral things. Indians think differently. We also have ethics, yeah. There are good things and bad things. We also encourage good things, discourage bad things. We are also human beings, no? I mean, just look at us. We just don't go around killing everybody, raping every possible woman, do we? So, because we think it's wrong to do such things, no. So, we have ethical notions, but it doesn't take the structure of of the religious thinking of the West.
Okay. So coming to the next point related to Atma, here we are just introduced to the term Atma, which means the self or yourself or the ego which is there in you. Okay. Okay.
Ego doesn't exist. According to Freud, it does. Yeah.
So there are other terminologies which are parallel to Atma, saying Antaratma, Paramatma, and other things, which are again quoted in Upanishads. I'm not taking any other grantha or anything else. So what could be the possible meaning of those words in this context?
That depends on the text. We'll discuss it when it comes to that. But Atman means, for example, in this case, how do most people use it as a substance? Atman is a substance. Yeah? Sadvastu they call it. It's a vastu. Yeah? It is sat. Now here Atman is talking about your own sake. It is a way of talking about oneself. So in that sense, Antaratma, Paramatma, all these words that they use, either it is used in a certain language, I don't know, depends upon the text. We'll sit down and read it. Whether Upanishads say that or not, it doesn't matter. It can mean multiple things. If your problem emerges if you think Atman is a substance, if it is not, you don't have that idea, then Atman means many things. Atman is a way of talking about oneself. Atman is referring to a particular thing inside oneself, not a substance. So it has the same flexibility as oneself. It can mean multiple things. But if you sit like the way most translators do, idea that's a substance, a specific substance inside the human body, then you get these problems of Antaratma, Jivatma, Paramatma, making this distinction. All right? It emerges because of you don't know what Atman is, basically.
Okay. Next one, followed to the same thing. From this context, what we understand is the selfish self is the Atma. Or
No.
Okay.
No, you do everything for yourself. Yeah.
Right.
That's the truth.
That's what the selfish self, if I would call it.
There's nothing selfish about it. That's where you are. That's
Right.
where everybody is.
So that term, probably the egoistic, you brought in the concept of egoistic. So ego is particularly a kind of a psychological substance, or what is it?
See, the problem is this: we're using words we don't understand.
Right.
Ego, that emerges from Latin, okay, refers to the soul. All right? When Freud comes and talks about ego and superego, he's talking about the structure of the psyche. Psyche is a Greek word that comes from the Greeks, which talks about something like a soul. Psyche, which goes to Hades, that is to the hell. So we don't know what ego means, my friend. We
Okay.
don't. Like for example, we don't know what psychology means. Psyche, we don't know what it means. Logos of psyche, we don't know what it means. We translate it as Manashastra. But we have Manas, we have Chitta, we have Buddhi. Psychology is supposed to be Manashastra. What is it? Shastra of Manas, is it? You also Shastra of Buddhi, Shastra of Chitta? No. What is it? The whole thing is Manashastra. That means what? There's only Manas. I mean, other things don't exist or what? We think, we have found Kannada word for psychology, we call it Manashastra. We don't know, because our psychology, to use that word, is something completely different. Read in Gita, there also you'll see it.
Right.
Okay? So, don't use such words. So use simple language. I do things for my own sake. Alright, what is your problem with it? Should I do it for your sake? I won't.
Right.
What's your problem with that? Your problem emerges because of the words you're using. I say things like ego and so on. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Got it.
Keep it simple. Then you'll discover so many problems are non-problems, pseudo-problems.
Okay. One more thing which is connected to the same, it's again a reading from a different Upanishad, not this. So if it is okay to bring it on here, I will do it. Otherwise, we can discuss later as well.
Go on. Tell me.
Okay. So in Mahanarayana Upanishad, this two verses come wherein which says, whatever is being done is not because of me, but because of two other things. One is the Kama and one is the Manyu. One is
the?
Manyu, which the Krodha. You can take that as anger. One is because of desire and one is because of anger. Because of these two things, I mean, these two are the elements which are doing and not me. So here, how do we interpret, or how do we understand this?
We understand it depends on any number of conversation, depends on how. For example, you can speak about causal factors. The cause of the action is, for example, you can say is anger, is lust, is desire, etc., etc. That's why this body acted. You have to say, no, I reasoned about it and I acted. As it could be, no, I desired for it some future goal, not desired, I wanted a future goal and acted. So a human action can be explained in multiple ways, which we do all the time. So that is precisely what, in a manner of speaking, scientific psychology should do. Explain, figure out how we act and why we act. So, indeed, sometimes they act out of anger, sometimes it act of something. And we say, ಯಾಕೆ ಕೋಪ ಬಂತು ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಗಳಿಗೆ ಸರಿ ಇರಲಿಲ್ಲ. And we also say that, isn't it? ಏನೋ ನಾಲ್ಗೆ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡ್ತು. ಏನ್ರಿ ನಾಲ್ಗೆ ಬಂತು ಅಂದರೆ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಅವ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಯೋಚನೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಮಾತಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಇಲ್ಲ ಸರ್, ಏನೋ ಕೆಟ್ಟಗಳಿಗೆ ಅದು ಹಂಗೆ ಅದು ಶನಿಕಾಟ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ, ಸರಿ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಬಿಡಿ, ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸಲಿ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಡಿ. We talk this way, don't we? Then?
And the next one. So, this is related to...
But wait, but there's something. If you talk this way in Europe, they laugh at you. They laugh at you. They find it humorous. Truly. Because they think you know all the time why you are doing something. For example, any number of times I have had this, I've been talking, something happens, I said, why did you react that way? I said, actually, I don't know why I reacted that way. I think I'll take a guess. Then they start laughing. So I ask, why? Even you don't know why you reacted that way? I said, no. No, I don't. Because we don't. And they find it very funny. So our way of talking is not their way of talking, because our psychologies, what we understand human beings are different. Or for example, there's another thing, extraordinary. So let's say this is a public space, let's say there's a fight. I'll come back to you. We have a fight. I have a fight with you, you have fights, whatever. The normal reaction, one of the typical reactions of Indians is, after some time on subsequent day, come and ask, we ask this, right? Because we don't know, even though we are there, we said, we don't know, this they find very funny, ridiculous, wrong, because you were there, therefore you know what happened. You know. There's no question about it. You can't say, I came to discuss and talk to you what happened. Rubbish. You were there, yeah? So you know what happened. No, I don't. What do you mean you don't? Did you not see it? Yes, I saw it. Then, you know what happened. This is Europe. This is America. And therefore, our use of English, you can now imagine how chaotic it is there if you go talk to them. That's when you discover you don't know English. When you talk to Europeans and Americans. We don't know English at all.
While we see these kind of, or rather I not call it interpretation, reading of these texts, there are striking differences or similarities with the Charvaka Siddhanta or Charvaka Darshana, which was there. Charvakas is again a class of people who propose that man does everything for himself. So they believed in there's no life after death and this is where you'll have to live and that's it. So Runam Kritvapi Ghritam Pibet is one of the famous sayings of it.
Don't bring them like that, Charvakas here, because it depends very much upon which self you're talking about. Okay? Now, in one sense, the strictest Advaitin also believes there is no, you won't live after your death, but your Atman doesn't. You're not your Atman. Atman doesn't die or gets born. Yeah? So, it can be completely Charvaka, completely Advaita. Don't use these distinctions because this way of dividing up Indian thinking itself is a very serious problem to us. We think Charvakas are materialists. They are not. That's what the Marxists have told us. Don't use those things.
So these are some of the things which probably we'll have to unlearn whatever we have learned and relearn something which is the right thing. But it does take time.
Try and take distance from these frameworks you have absorbed. But focus on the text, read honestly what they have written. To use in an Indian way to understand it. Not the European way, Indian way of understanding. ಇವಾಗ ನಾನು ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕರ್ತೃ ಅಲ್ಲದೆ ಇದ್ರೆ ಕರ್ತ ಹೆಂಗಾಗ್ತೀಯ ನೀನು? You're doing everything for yourself, but who is this yourself? If you know the answer to that, you have your Atmagyan and you'll discover actually that you're not a kartru at all. The self is not a kartru, cannot be. It is only if you assume it is some part of your body. Something to do with volition and will and so on. Self ಆಥರ ಆದರೆ ನಾನು ಕರ್ತೃ ಅಂತ ಬಂದ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. In fact, in certain phases, or certain stages, or certain processes, or in certain directions of Atmajnana would be the realization that precisely that you are not an agent at all. You always thought you were an agent, but you are not an agent. That discovery. Many people have it also. I thought I used to do everything, and you discover actually I did not. I thought I was an agent, I thought I was a kartru, but I was not. See, in a way, perhaps I should tell you this. It's important. I think it is from Saraswati Vadins, as a Buddhist group. They had this notion called Pudgala. I don't know if you heard of it. Or we can say Purusha. They were called Pudgalavadins. That is to say, they used to think that every human being, there is a Pudgala or is a Purusha. Like in Balu, there is a Pudgala called Balu. Okay. And in all of you, there is each one of us has his own Pudgala. It's something like a soul, but not quite a soul. So this Pudgala thinks, this Pudgala feels, and that is what Balu means when I say, I think, he's saying actually this Pudgala is thinking that. And he is that Pudgala. Now, this is very present in all cultures, including Indian and also in Middle Eastern. And the idea of soul emerges from Pudgala there. And ours also, one of the problems of our Acharyas was this. They fell prey to this very primitive psychological understanding of human persons as existence of a Pudgala, because it's a very normal way to think. Like he said, who is the I who understood it? There must be a person. For example, that's how they thought, for instance, Europe, Western thinking about memory. They thought memory, even now, but nowadays is more or less gone. Idea was memory is something like is a storehouse. Okay, that's what they thought. So retrieval from memory is to go there, take it from the storehouse. Until 20 years ago, this is the dominant idea of memory they had in psychology. A problem is this. So suppose you see a grandmother. Question is, how do you recognize that this is your grandmother's face? In this idea of the storehouse, the image of the grandmother goes, somebody has to go with that image, look at all the subjects, stock that is there, compare it to another image of the grandmother and bring it out. Question is, who compares the image of your grandmother with what is in your brain? There's another Pudgala doing it. So like this idea of idea of memory as a storehouse works precisely with this idea of Pudgala. And that got destroyed thanks to artificial intelligence. It shows that that is not how we solve the problem of memory at all, because it got caught into infinite regress, each Pudgala requiring another Pudgala. So Indians don't have that notion of memory at all. Memory is not a storehouse in us. Jnapaka Shakti we call it. That's precisely modern understanding. The strength of neural connections, that is memory, basically. That's how we spoke of memory. So this idea of, so this way, namely there's someone to remember, someone to think, someone to feel, this comes from, and that someone is all one and the same, Pudgala. That's a very, very prevalent but very primitive psychological understanding of human beings. So one of the reasons, why they fell prey to that, our acharyas, has to do with this feeling, it's very, very intuitively present, of human personality. Namely, inside there's a Pudgala. Even though they criticize it. We talk that way, yes. But that is a language, which also creates certain other problems for us. But so this problem that there must be someone is a question of language and metaphysics. It's not a question of psychology. Take a simple thing like a thermostat. It judges the temperature, brings the temperature down and shuts down on temperatures beyond certain level. Does it mean there is somebody inside thinking about it? Exactly. Such processes also occur inside organism, like you. In other words, some kind of a monitoring doesn't require the presence of a person. Who is monitoring it? Yeah. So when you're tracking and monitoring, it does not mean there has to be a monitor to do that. And when you don't know that existence of such processes, you automatically think there must be a monitor. No. Bhoktru, no Allah. ಬಳಸ್ತೀರಾ? ಅದು ಕೇಳಿ ಯಾರು ಶಂಕರರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ಕೇಳಿ ದಯವಿಟ್ಟು. ನಾನು ಆತ್ಮನೇ ಒಂದು ಸಾಕ್ಷಿನ ಕೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ನೋಡಿಪ್ಪ, ಒಂದು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಂಬೇಡಿ. ಯೂಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಸೀರಿಯಸ್ಲಿ. ಇಫ್ ಇಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಟು ಬಿ ಎ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿ, ಇಟ್ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಸಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ಸೊ your ಆತ್ಮ ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಐಸ್ ಅಲ್ವಾ? It must have brains to interpret it alwa, to judge alwa. So if Atma becomes a Sakshi, if it is a brain, there must be blood alwa, or some kind of movement of energy alwa. There must be something like heart pumping blood alwa. So your Sakshi becomes basically yourself inside yourself, your body. ಅದು ಹಂಗಿದೆಯಾ? ಇಲ್ಲ. ಸೊ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿ ಆಗಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಬಿಟ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇರಬೇಕು. ಏನೋ ಇದನ್ನು ಅವತ್ತು ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು, ಸಾಕ್ಷಿಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. So you must have a memory. So basically you're reconstructing yourself and putting another body in you as big as you, inside I don't know where, invisible to everybody except including yourself. So Atma Sakshi, ಈ ಪದಗಳು ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಬೇಡಿ. ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ತಾರೆ ಜನರು, don't use it. ಇವಾಗ ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಇವತ್ತು ಇದು ನೋಡಿದ್ವಿ, ಜಸ್ಟ್ ಗಿವ್ ಎನ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್. ಪ್ರಜಾಪತಿ ಸತ್ಯಕಾಮ ಸತ್ಯ ಸಂಕಲ್ಪ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ದ, ಟ್ರೂ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಆತ್ಮನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಮಾತಾಡ್ದ. ಯು ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಬಿ ಕೇರ್ಫುಲ್ ವೆನ್ ಯು ರೀಡ್ ಇಟ್. ಸತ್ಯ ಸಂಕಲ್ಪ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ವಾಟ್ ಡಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಮೀನ್? True volition. That means he must have volition, which means he's got a will. If he's got a will, he must have a brain. A brain means an organism, it's a body. ಆತ್ಮಂಗದೆಲ್ಲ ಇಲ್ಲ ರೀ ಬ್ರಹ್ಮಂಗೆ. ಯಾಕೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾನೆ ಪ್ರಜಾಪತಿ ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ? ಅವನು ಹೇಳ ನಾನು ತೊಗೊಂಬಿಡ್ಬೇಡಿ. ಸತ್ಯ ಕಾಮ ಹಂಗಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ರಿ? ಟ್ರೂ ಡಿಸೈರ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ರಿ? ಫಾಲ್ಸ್ ಡಿಸೈರ್ ಏನ್ರಿ? ಹೌ ದ ಹೆಲ್ ಡು ಯು ನೋ ಇಟ್? ಐಸೆ ಹೊಟ್ಟೆ ಹಸಿ ಇದೆ ತಿನ್ನಬೇಕು. ಟ್ರೂ ಡಿಸೈರಾ ಫಾಲ್ಸ್ ಡಿಸೈರಾ? ನಿಪ್ಪಟ್ಟು ಬೇಕಾ ಬಿಸ್ಕೆಟ್ ಬೇಕಾ? ಯಾವ ಟ್ರೂ ಡಿಸೈರ್ ಇದು? ಎರಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎರಡನ್ನು ನುಂಗಾಕ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀನಿ ಬೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅದು. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ವೇ ಆಫ್ ಟಾಕಿಂಗ್, ಯು ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಫಿಗರ್ ಔಟ್ ವೈ ದೇ ಡಿಡ್ ಇಟ್, ಬಟ್ ದಟ್ ಡೋಂಟ್ ಟೇಕ್ ದಟ್ as some kind of a truth about the world. It's not, it cannot be. So Atma is used as a sakshi, yes. What the hell does it mean? ಹೌದಾ? ಇಲ್ಲ ಕಣ, ಆತ್ಮ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿ ಅಂತಲೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ ಅದ್ವೈತಿಗಳು. ಅಲ್ಲ, ಆತ್ಮನೇ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿ. ಆತ್ಮ ಸಾಕ್ಷಿ ರೂಪದಲ್ಲಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಆ ಥರ. ಅಲ್ಲ, ಆತ್ಮ ಬೇರೆ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒನ್ ಸೆಲ್ಫ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತದು, ಬಟ್ ಅದು ಬೇರೆ. ಅದು ನಿಮ್ಮ ತಾಯಿ ಆತ್ಮಕ್ಕೆ ಇವತ್ತು ಪ್ರೀತಿ ಆಯಿತು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ದಂಗೆ ಅದು. ಅದೇ, ಇನ್ನೇನಿಲ್ಲ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ನಾವು ಒಂದು ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ, ನಾವು ಇಂಡಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಾಪಟ್ಟೆ ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಇಮಿಟೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ ಅಲ್ವಾ? ನಮ್ಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗಲ್ಲ ಏನು ಪಡೋದು. ಹೇಳಿದ್ನ ಸೈಕಾಲಜಿನ ಮನಃಶಾಸ್ತ್ರ ಅಂದ್ಬಿಡೋದು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನಂತ್ರಿ ಮನಸ್ಸು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನ್ರಿ? ಮನಸ್ಸು ಬುದ್ಧಿ ಚಿತ್ತ ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ಒಂದೇ ರೀ. ಸರಿ ಬಿಡಿಯಪ್ಪ, ಎಲ್ಲನೂ ಒಂದೇ ಅಂದರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬಿಡಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಸೊ ನಾವು ಈ ರೀತಿ ಕಲ್ತು ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಮಾತಾಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಭಾಷೆಗಳು ಬದಲಾಯಿಸ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ.